Thank you so much for joining us today for a few ODOT recruitment updates. And my name is Erin Menne. I'm the recruitment team lead and a senior recruitment consultant with our agency. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share a few highlights of what we've been working on and what we will be working on. In our time together, I'll be focusing on 3 key aspects of ODOT recruitment. So equity in recruiting, community outreach, and the COVID-19 vaccination requirements. I'll be providing a brief update on how Executive Order 2129 affects recruitment. Okay, I'd like to start our presentation by sharing the first strategic outcome listed in our agency's strategic action plan, creating a more diverse workforce. Our team is actively working and partnering with the Office of Social Equity to identify areas of opportunity, review and revise materials, develop procedures, and make critical changes that will support creating a more diverse workforce. And so on the next slide, since December 2020, our recruitment unit has been meeting biweekly to examine our agency recruitment processes with a focus on equity in support of our agency's strategic action plan. These meetings now include the Office of Social Equity and other areas of HR. As a team, we are working through each step in the process, establishing an equity framework. We started with drafting and will finish with onboarding. As of October 2021, we have finished our initial review of the drafting and outreach steps, and we are currently reviewing processes at the interview step. Here are just a few examples of actions that we have already taken as a result of our equity and recruiting initiative. First, we developed increased guidance on how to create desired attributes that can be confidently assessed by hiring teams, adding the guidance to our agency's HR recruitment manual that we update quarterly. Second, we incorporated steps into our team processes to help ensure our announcements use equitable, accessible, and inclusive language. Each announcement is first drafted using Microsoft Word, then reviewed using features in Word to assess readability and accessibility. We also frequently have team writing activities to help improve our usage and knowledge of plain language and writing for the web. Next, we have restructured minimum qualifications. We are unable to change minimum qualifications at the agency level, but we are able to restructure them to show experience-based qualifying pathways first and degree-based qualifying pathways second. If reviewing a job announcement, applicants will first see the experience-based option if applicable. As a result, we hope that this will encourage potential applicants without degrees to apply. Also, in our announcements, you may have noticed at the end of the A Day in the Life duty section that there's an option to email the team to request a copy of the position description. We now include this to help ensure that all applicants are aware of the opportunity to request a full position description. We have also been reviewing our outreach and advertising strategy, shifting focus to establishing and maintaining community partnerships. Before we move on to the next section of what we're currently are working on or will be working on, I wanted to take a moment to share the gender decoder tool that we use in our announcements. Recruiters run announcement language through this resource to determine if the ad is masculine or feminine coded or neutral. We are then able to see ways to identify and remove the bias in our announcements. At the beginning of this section, I mentioned that we had finished our initial review of drafting and outreach. I said initial because this will be continuous. We will be continuously revising, reviewing, and revisiting each section. As a team, we're committed to quarterly reviews of our documents and processes overall. Here are just a few examples of other things that we either are finalizing, working on, or plan to work on. Increasing applicant and hiring team resources, creating a standardized interview template to be used across the agency, reviewing and creating guidance for hiring teams on how to create a warm and welcoming environment during interviews, and more to come. We'll continue to share out updates on our intranet site and other internal communications. If you have suggestions, please send them to us. I put our email address on the slide as well. In our next section, I'd like to take a few moments to discuss community outreach. We are continuing to attend events. For example, we are attending virtual career fairs, and I've also hosted internal virtual career-focused events. For example, lunchtime learning opportunities for interns. As a result of our equity and recruiting meetings, we've identified an opportunity to expand and shift our outreach. We are actively working on examining our outreach and establishing and maintaining partnerships with community organizations. We have also created and are maintaining a comprehensive outreach spreadsheet and are looking at ways to continue to grow our connections, be intentional in our outreach, and keep building relationships. Do you have suggestions on how we can improve? Please let us know. Here are just a few on the slide. So here are just a few of our many outreach activities that we're focusing on. Did you know that we're members of Partners in Diversity? Have you attended a webinar event? We share these opportunities via the News Hub. Our recruiters also consistently send career opportunities to local professional and community organizations such as WTS Portland and Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs, OAME. We are also continuing to grow our social media outreach. We're now partnering at the enterprise level to develop a state of Oregon outreach strategy in addition to our agency's communication plan. And to close out this section, I'd like to take a moment to share how Executive Order 2129 affects recruitment. The state of Oregon is requiring all executive branch employees to complete their COVID-19 vaccination series or have requested or received a medical or religious exception by October 18th. New employees must also submit vaccination documentation or request or receive an exception by the 18th. Please do not send your vaccination or exception documentation with your application materials. If you're selected as a successful candidate for recruitment, we will provide the next steps when needed. Thank you so much for joining our session today to learn more about ODOT recruiting.
Thank you, Erin. All right, now it's for the test. We're going to pass it over to Ann Pratt to give us a compensation update, and I am going to give her control of the PowerPoint. So give me just a moment. Ann, is there a way you can request control from me? Oh, here it is. There we go. Allow. Okay, you should have it. And I think you're muted. Could just unmute yourself. I will try to help. All right, and I'm trying to find you in the chat to unmute you. There you are. Okay. And will it not let you unmute yourself? For some reason, it won't let me do it. Ellen, are you in here? Maybe can you help us unmute Ann? Well,
I can go through mine if you want me to start on mine, and then Ann can go next.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, why don't you do that, and I'll work on unmuting Ann. Go for it.
All right. So if I could drive anywhere in Oregon, it would be Eastern Oregon, because I've really only made it over to Pendleton and John Day, and I want to go further. I want to travel every highway in Oregon before I retire, and I want to make it down to Basque Station because that's like the most remote place we have, and I've heard all about it over the years, and I need to get down there. I drive because I have a 1-ton diesel pickup and a camper, and I would travel and just go and go and go. And I think the biggest reason for that is everything I've learned in my time here at the agency just makes me proud to be an ODOT employee. So I love fresh paving. I love stripes. I love all that stuff. And so every time I'm out on the highways, I'm just so excited to know that I'm part of something so much bigger. And that we do a great job keeping those roads safe. So that's where I'd go, Eastern Oregon. So I'm Anna Giddens-Reed, and I am here to talk about manager focus groups. Right now, I'm the Central Operations Manager in HR, which means we do a lot of the processing, the recruitment, classification, records. I'm also the Interim Learning and Development Manager while that vacancy is being recruited for. So it kind of puts me in a really unique situation to see so many processes occurring through so many different HR units. So in spring, the Learning and Development team started running manager focus groups, and really we're trying to find out from managers, like what's the most pressing concern for their day-to-day work. And so we have a few more left to go, but we've met with over 70 managers so far to get a test the temperature of what they're feeling, what things are going on. And so in the slide, you'll see that the questions are there. What are the most pressing concerns? What knowledge, skills, and abilities do you need? How do you like to learn? What are all the topics that HR can help support you as managers? And what we're hearing is a lot. We're hearing a lot. I'm a manager too. It's tough being a manager these days. The number one thing we're hearing is really time management, priorities, and resources. And then you'll see that there's some other common themes there as well. And so we're hoping that we can really come together and try and find solutions to make it a little easier on us. So final groups wrap up hopefully this month. And then we're going to be putting all of the information through software because we have biases too. I might think that recruitment might be the most important thing we need to help managers with, where another HR person might think it be leadership or policy review. So we're going to be trying to put that all through this. There'll be some human analysis as well. And then we want to share that upline to work together and hopefully come up with some real tools and solutions. Let's see. I think that with all the changes we have, it's become increasingly more difficult, to be a manager. You have to be everywhere at once. So I'm hoping that if we're able to gather all this information, it'll build stronger partnerships with managers. It'll help us understand each other's work so much better so that we can all start heading in one direction. We'll know what our expectations are and what our responsibilities are. And personally, for me, the relationships I've built throughout the last few years have been tremendous. And so I think that if we all understand our work a little bit better, it might make it a little bit easier to get things done. So hopefully we'll have that information out. We'll be following up with managers towards the end of the year, and I expect great things to come out of that. And that's all I have to share.
All right, thank you, Anna. Anne, I see you got yourself off mute. Look at you.
Yes. Woo-hoo.
Awesome. So let me go back to your slide and I will give you control if you want to request control from me, and I will allow it.
I'll do that. Okay. Sorry,
Awesome.
everyone. Technical difficulties. So I think I got all connected back in and we're good. So my name is Ann Pratt. I'm a senior classification and compensation consultant here in ODOT HR. And if I could go anywhere in Oregon tomorrow, I think I'd drive to Port Orford with my family. I love the views there. So I'm here to show you a couple of cool compensation resources that are out on the state web. The first is the ODOT compensation calculator. And this is found on the main ODOT internet site, and that's the external public facing ODOT site. So I'm going to share my screen to give you a look at the ODOT compensation calculator. Hopefully everybody can see that. The reason it's out on the external website is because it can be used by candidates who are applying for jobs. They might not be a state employee yet, so they don't have access to the ODOT intranet, but they can go out to the external website and navigate to this, going to oregon.gov/ODOT and then clicking on About Us and current opportunities, and that'll get you about halfway down the page. They have the compensation calculator. This is a tool that can be used by managers when they're making job offers to show the benefits of working for the state beyond just monthly salary. And it's something that current employees could also use if they're planning their next career move and they want to weigh a potential job offer against their current compensation with the state. So say the producers of Jeopardy knock on your door and they wasted all their money bringing expensive guest hosts in over the last year, and they're going to offer you $80,000 to host the show, no benefits, and you have to move to California. So if you come out here and you plug in your current salary, say you're about mid-range of a Engineering Specialist 3, and you're not new to state service, you've got 6 years with the state, plug in that data, and it will give you a breakdown of the benefits, the value of the benefits that you that are available to you. So your holidays have a monetary value there, your vacation leave, sick leave, everything is kind of calculated out. And you can see that your total estimated compensation is about $84,000. So you can weigh your Jeopardy hosting offer against your current state job and see if you want to take the deal. The next tool that I want to show you guys is a report that is published every other year by the Department of Administrative Services, and this ties into total compensation as well. The report is found on the external public-facing DAS website, and that's navigated through oregon.gov/DAS HR. If you go to their job classifications and pay rates page, there's a link right there to the salary and benefits report. And you can also look at past reports as well to see how things have changed. I won't take up too much time scrolling through this report, but there's a lot of information about what the report is, how it can be used, and where they get the data. The gist of it is that this is a market research report that compares what the state of Oregon pays versus employers or pays our employees in various job classifications versus what other public and private employers pay in Oregon and surrounding states. So the goal is to keep total compensation in the state of Oregon between 95 to 105% of the compensation that's earned by similarly situated employees in comparable markets. So if you go to this report and you scroll down, you'll see some interesting data and kind of see where we stack up in terms of salary and benefits against other employers in the market. There's a lot of data in the beginning there, and then they get into the job classifications that you find in the state of Oregon. And so you can scroll through and find your job classification and kind of see what other states, what other counties pay for jobs that are similar to yours. And again, this is published out on the DAS website every other year. And there's usually a past salary report out there that you can compare to the current one. And the report's not just for fun. This is used when the state's building its budget and when they're participating in salary negotiations as part of collective bargaining and classification studies, salary selectives, things like that. So this report's used in actual decision making here in the state of Oregon, and it can be a helpful resource for both managers and employees who are engaged in those kinds of activities, as well as for your own personal education and career growth purposes. So I hope you found these tools useful, and I'm going to turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Anne. So we'll be going to Carla Finegan for labor relations update, and just making sure that we have the right presentation up. Can we see the screen? Can someone tell me yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Carla. And
One more.
get to your slide. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Carla Finegan here, and if I were going to go anywhere tomorrow, which I probably will, it will be driving out to our family farm. That's about 10 miles southwest of Dallas, Oregon. And I would jump into the Kubota RTV for one last trip around the 109 acres of that farm before the new owner takes full possession. Because after 40 some years of living at that farm, my mother-in-law successfully sold it, and we've been cleaning it off, cleaning it out of equipment and all the outbuildings, and it's been a big project very satisfying, but a lot of memories there. So that's what we'll be doing this weekend, is finalizing our getting the rest of things off and taking final trips around the fields and the pastures and the blackberry bushes and so on. So I am very proud to serve as the ODOT Labor Relations Manager in Human Resources, and as such, I spend much time involved in bargaining. This year, we negotiated some items that will benefit many or all executive service employees, and I want to cover some specific items today. The first one I want to cover is the pandemic recognition pay. It will be available to all executive branch employees who meet the criteria. It's a tiered payment arrangement allowing a lump sum minus applicable deductions to be paid to frontline workers. And the definition of frontline workers for purposes of the pandemic recognition pay is someone who has a job that puts the individual at higher risk from contacting COVID-19 because they cannot perform their job duties from home or another setting that limits the regular, close, or routine contact with others outside of the household. Specifically, they engage in regular, close contact with others outside of their household less than 6 feet on a routine basis, which is more than 15 minutes per person, close contact with others outside of their household. And they worked on site, that is, it was not telecommute work, it was on site between March 2020 and June 2021. Employees who worked between 480 hours to 1,039 hours will be paid $1,050. Employees who worked at least 1,040 hours will be paid $1,550. In addition to qualifying for one of those two tiers, recognition will be provided to frontline workers who work 200 or more overtime hours during that period. And that additional one-time payment is $575. Some questions and additional details are being worked out between DAS Labor Relations and the unions. For example, one question is, if a person was here, worked, met the criteria, but now has left the agency, will that person still get a lump sum? Another question, probably the one I'm asked the most, is when will we get the payout? And unfortunately, I do not have answers to those questions yet. Another item that we bargained were cost of living allowances, or COLAs, for all employees effective this biennium. 2.5% COLA is effective December 1 of 2021, payable in January of 2022, and a 3.1% COLA effective December 1 of 2022, paid in January of 2023. Training on the changes in the SEIU and AEE collective bargaining agreements will be available to management service employees via Workday Learning. You will see the course offerings and can enroll for a live session with me. And I expect at least one of each type of session covering the AE changes and the SEIU changes to be recorded. So you will also have the added option of watching a recorded presentation as your own schedule allows. Now I'm going to give you a very fast highlight summary of the letters of agreement with SEIU and AEE, and also Addendum A that covers management service and unrepresented employees regarding the vaccine mandate. And if any information changes, the source documents are the ultimate resources and references. And just so you can save your hand from taking notes, the summary will be posted on the HR website today. First of all, employees must begin the vaccination process receiving at least one dose, or start the exception process submitting a written request for an exception in Workday by October 18 in order to avoid any personnel action. Employees who have begun but not completed the vaccination process will have until November 30, 2021 to become fully vaccinated and avoid personnel action. And employees are required to notify employer of status and expected date of full vaccination. Between October 18 and the point of full vaccination, employees will be expected to work remotely if possible, And if remote work is not possible, employees will use accrued vacation or compensatory time or leave without pay, the employee's option, to cover the time until full vaccination status is reached. The state will make reasonable accommodations for employees unable to be vaccinated due to disability, qualifying medical conditions, or a sincerely held religious belief. Reasonable accommodations may include but are not limited to remote or telework where possible, transfer of positions, shift changes, physical modifications to the employee's work area. Employees must submit a request using Workday by October 18. Employees who have entered into the exception process on or before October 18 will be allowed to complete the exception process before any personnel action might be taken. The employee will be allowed to continue working while awaiting a decision on that exception request. Safety measures may be taken to keep the employee and others safe in the workplace. After October 18, if an exception request is denied, the employee will have 7 days from the date from the denial to begin the vaccination process, which is get a first dose, before the state takes personnel action. Between the time of denial and full vaccination status, the employee will be expected to work remotely if possible. If remote work is not possible, employees will use accrued vacation or compensatory time or leave without pay, the employee's option, to cover time until full vaccination status is reached. Exception denials are not grievable, but this doesn't prevent an employee from filing a complaint with BOLI or taking other legal action. The state will seek to provide on-site COVID-19 vaccination clinics and will provide weekly information about vaccination locations near work sites. Employees will be allowed work time and/or flex their schedules to get the vaccine during normal work hours when possible. Employees who cannot get the vaccine during normal work hours will be compensated for the time it takes to get the vaccine pursuant to the overtime article or Fair Labor Standards Act policy when applicable. Employees unable to work due to adverse reactions to the vaccine shall use accrued sick leave for the first 8 hours necessary to recover. An employee who exhausts their sick leave will be granted miscellaneous paid leave, or MPL, for the time needed to recover. And if more than 1 day of MPL is needed, the employee will be required to get documentation from a healthcare provider indicating the need for time off work and expected length of time needed to recover. The effective date of the LOAs is August 13, 2021, the date of the governor's executive order. So an employee who took sick leave and coded SL to obtain a vaccination since August 13 may submit a corrected timesheet for the day and month of the vaccination and change the SL to RG. The SEIU LOA applies to temporary employees. Addendum A does not apply to temporary employees. If a represented employee chooses to have a union representative present for the exception request interactive process, it is permitted, and the requesting employee would make the arrangements. Current employees may not request exceptions after October 18 unless an employee has been on protected leave, including military leave. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Reba.
Thank you, Carla. You shared some great information with us, and we will make sure that links are available where this presentation is stored to all of those documents with that information for you guys. So I'm going to turn over to Kristina Porreco and Carmen Carver to talk more about the vaccination process and the exception process. Take it away.
Thank you, Reba. Good morning, ODA. I am Carmen Carver. If I could go anywhere in Oregon, I would take the train around Mount Hood around the holidays. I think it's called the Holiday Express. Been really looking at that. Want to take my kiddos on that train ride, and obviously to get there, I'd have to take my vehicle. But kind of a kid at heart when I take my kids to do stuff like that. So it's fun to just step out of adulting and go do stuff like that. So that's what I would do. I'm joined today with my partner, Kristina Porreco. We are senior HR business partners and are 2 members of the team reviewing the requests for medical and/or sincerely held religious belief exceptions to the executive order that requires an employee to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. As of this morning, we have received 568 requests for exceptions, and we have engaged with each request. We'll talk a little bit about the exception process, and if you're thinking about submitting an exception request, we encourage you to get those in sooner rather than later. Please keep in mind, as Carla mentioned, the deadline for all current employees to request an exception is no later than October 18th, 2021. Current employees are unable to request an exception after October 18th. As Carla mentioned, these requests must be submitted into Workday. So what's needed if you're requesting an exception? If you're requesting a medical exception, we must have a medical provider supporting your request. For a sincerely held religious belief, there's no additional documentation or documents that are required. We just ask that you please clearly answer the questions in Workday so we can review your request in a timely manner. What happens after you submit a request? So requests are reviewed in the order in which they are received, and right now we're able to respond to them on a daily basis. HR will contact you via email to go through the interactive process, and we ask that you please monitor your email and respond promptly.
All right, so I'm going to pick it up here. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristina Porreco. If I could go anywhere in Oregon, I would like to go out to the Alvord Hot Springs. I have a friend that goes there every year. It takes these amazing pictures of like a billion stars. Like, I don't even know how you can see that many stars because I live in the city and I don't see very many stars here. So I want to go there and soak in the hot springs and de-stress and stare at some stars. I would have to drive though because it's in the middle of nowhere. I looked before I answered the question, like, could I get there another way? Nope, I'm driving. So with the interactive process, so in order for us to approve an exception to the vaccine mandate, we must be able to identify and put into place what we call reasonable accommodations that minimize the risk in the workplace. So that is what will occur during the interactive process. We'll engage with the employee and we'll engage with the manager, and we'll identify what are the working conditions, what are the job duties, and what accommodations are reasonable, make sense, and reduce the risk. Carla spoke to what a few of those might be: working remotely to the extent possible, working in private offices, riding alone in state vehicles, and the wearing of an N95 mask. The N95 mask is going to be a baseline accommodation, so every employee that receives an exception will be issued N95 masks to wear. They'll be wearing them during the same times that we are currently required to wear facial coverings. So when you're not alone in an office, when you're in a conference room or a shared space with other people, when you're in a vehicle with other people, and when you're outside and cannot maintain the 6 feet of social distancing. So we are engaging with employees and managers mostly by email right now, just because it's kind of, you know, the fastest, quickest way to get, but we are calling some people. We are having phone calls, receiving phone calls from people to answer questions, and we're happy to do that. So if any of you get an email as a manager or as an employee requesting an exception, please feel free to give us a call if you have questions. We're happy to answer them. As I mentioned, the accommodations are based on the position and the individual. So, you know, you might, if you request an exception, you may receive different accommodations than someone else because your job may be different, your working conditions may be different. ODOT will be providing the N95s. That is something we're trying to make clear in our communications, but in case anyone does have that question, they will be provided by ODOT. And then accommodations are always temporary, whether it be under the ADA or under the sincerely held religious belief. The accommodations associated with the exception are temporary. And the reason that is so that we have the ability to go back and review them and change them if they're not working or if the conditions change. And what we mean by the conditions changing, maybe the employee requesting an exception has a job transfer to a position that's 100% working remotely from home. We would review their accommodations because they probably would no longer need some of the ones that were listed in their initial approval letter. The ones that we're approving right now for the bulk of employees are being approved through February 18th of 2021, which is just 4 months. And we just, we picked what seemed reasonable. If the executive order were to be lifted, we might review them sooner. If things change and there are additional criteria added to the executive order or additional direction from the governor's office, we also might have to review them sooner. But that, if nothing changes, expect to hear from your HR business partner on February 18th or before probably, but around that time to review and make sure that they're still working. And if an employee needs them to be revisited, they can also reach out to their HR business partner at any time or to one of us on the team that's reviewing them now, and we can review them sooner as well. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So that leaves us 5 minutes for some questions. And there are some questions that are submitted in Slido. That I'll go through. And just so you know, the individual questions here, every question won't be answered, but we will provide you with the information, the documentation that's already out there that has the information in it. So if you go into Slido and you put thumbs up on some of these questions, it'll highlight the ones that people want to hear the most. And the first one that I have is, let's see, this one's probably for Carmen and Kristina. What if an employee could have teleworked but chose to report into the office? So I guess I'm not exactly sure.
I think
a couple different scenarios.
Yeah, my guess is they're talking about an employee whose position could be done from home, but the employee historically has declined to telework. So those are happening. We're hearing from some managers like, yes, this position could work from home, but the person doesn't want to. So that's part of the interactive process that we're having conversations with employees. There are very legitimate reasons for some employees why working from home will not work for them, and they might be personal, confidential things that they're not wanting to share with their manager. So we're having those conversations. Oh, Laura, okay, good clarification. So Laura's asking if they could have worked from home, but they chose to come into the office, are they going to get the pandemic pay? Carla, that's a you question.
Yeah, according to the LOA, yes. According to the LOA, they work, let's see, for purposes of the pandemic recognition pay, it's someone who cannot perform job duties from home or another setting that limits the regular, close, or routine contact with others outside the household. So if someone could have worked at home, then that doesn't mean meet the definition that's in the LOA and the addendum.
Thank you, Carla. So there's another question in here that I think is for Erin in recruiting. So do we bring the employee on, a new employee, and then have them upload in Workday their exception or vaccination information? If so, that takes a while to get set up, and I can't see the rest of the question. So, oh, I guess that's it. If so, that takes a while to get set up. So that either is a Carmen and Kristina, or it's an Erin question. As far as new employees, how do we get them up their vaccination or their exception uploaded?
I can answer that question. So I'm actually going to put a link in the chat as well. This is our intranet page that we have set up for recruitment process scenarios. So just where you're at in each step. So if recruitment's already been posted, it's already posted, already referred. And then at that offer step, we are working on finalizing what this looks like. Some things are at the agency level, so we know like who is being hired on which day, or who's submitting or who's accepting a new position. However, for the DAS Workday team, they're working on like long term. So also generating those tasks for new employees. We are aware that if you were hired between certain dates, so we're working on how to get information to people and then how to get those acknowledgements. So I did put it in the chat. I encourage you to bookmark it, and that's where you'll find out more information. And then we'll also communicate out through our internal channels as well when that process is finalized on what to do next.
Thank you, Erin. I think maybe we can take a couple more questions. So this one's probably for Carla about frontline workers and how do we determine who a frontline worker is? Does HR automatically determine or are required to submit something saying that we're a frontline worker?
The employees don't have to submit anything. The work is being spearheaded by DAS, Labor Relations, and the Chief HR Office. They will, with some agencies, need to work with managers to confirm who was working on site, who was teleworking, who worked at alternate work sites, what payroll record show, was it RG versus the telecommuting code, TCM. So an employee doesn't have to take any proactive action. It's being done by folks, as I just noted, to do it behind the scenes, as it were.
Okay. Thank you, Carla. So we'll take one more question before we say goodbye for the day. And this one is for Carmen and Kristina about exceptions. So could we allow an employee that can't remote work but has started the vaccination process to continue to work with an N95 mask? So if they have started the vaccination process, they haven't finished it yet. If they wear an N95 mask, can they continue to work in the office?
I think this might be a hybrid question with Carla, and I think the answer, according to the LOA, is no. Carla, do you have a different opinion on that?
I don't have a different opinion.
Okay, so the LOA is pretty clear on that, on that and we can't violate an LOA. So if it's a management services employee, I would need to look at the policy to see if it's as clear. But for SEIU and AWE represented employees, the LOAs mirror the same language on that. So we do have to follow that.
Okay. And we'll make sure that there are links to this information on the Fall Forum site for anyone who would like to peruse it. All right. Well, if that's all we have today. So thank you so much for joining us. We will stop the recording and you guys have a great rest of your Fall Forum.